So anyway, I figured that right before, because I'm going to go off to see my family for a bit, for a week or so, and I figured that beforehand I wanted to try and get my Premier League predictions up. If I remember last year, I think it lasted about 45 minutes. So I'm going to try and make it quite a bit shorter this time. So I'm not going to go through every team in detail. I'm probably going to go through the bottom end and the top end in a bit of detail, and the rest I'll just give brief synopses on why I feel teams will finish the way they do. Let me know in the comments below if I get transfers desperately wrong, or if I haven't a clue what I'm talking about with regards to players or transfers incoming and outgoing of the respective clubs that I'm going to mention. So without further ado, let's get into it. So obviously, 3 teams from the Premier League have to go down, and I've actually got the list in front of me so I actually know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Number 20. Now 20th, I predicted them to finish there last year, if I remember rightly, Huddersfield. Hopefully they stay up, because I've got a friend from college who's a Huddersfield fan. Shout out to Chris, if he's actually somehow watching this video. I don't think they'll have enough this time, especially with second season syndrome. I think that will really hamper and hinder them this time. But you never know. Hopefully they go over to prove people wrong, and fingers crossed they have enough in them to stay up again, but we'll see. 19th, Cardiff. Out of the 3 promoted clubs, these are the ones who I feel have strengthened the least. And although that's certainly not a bad thing, Newcastle, for example, finished top 10 last year, and what you would argue are championship players, they finished 10th. So there's no reason Cardiff can't stay up. The reason I think they'll get relegated is because Neil Warnock is a fantastic championship manager, but he's not one who can really excel at Premier League level. And in the past, when you look at Palace and QPR as 2 recent examples, he hasn't lasted the full season. And had he lasted the full season, who knows, he might have got them relegated. Who knows, they may very well stay up. Take it with a pinch of salt, Cardiff fans, but I mean, I just don't think Cardiff have enough quality. 18th, Watford. I've tipped them to go down quite a few times, actually, and they never seem to go down. I think apart from Gerard Deulofeu, they haven't brought anyone in who I think has been memorable. Again, I might not know much there, but the last I remember is that apparently they had a loan offer for Craig Dawson, who was relegated with West Brom last season, rejected. If that's the best they're going for, then that doesn't seem very convincing for me. So Watford, I think, will finish 18th to complete the relegated spot. 17th, Brighton. Like Huddersfield, I think second season syndrome could be a factor into it. But I do think they'll have enough in them just to scrape. I think Chris Hughton's a great guy, but I think he's a decent manager at Premier League level. Bit harshly treated at Norwich, I think, but they'll know the circumstances more than I do. But I do like Chris Hughton, and hopefully for him especially, I hope that they do well. 16th, now this is the interesting one, Burnley. I've put them down here because I think their squad massively overachieved last season, and I think that depending on how far they get in the Europa League, that could really hinder their chances of staying up this season. But at the same time, who knows? If they get knocked out of the Europa League fairly early, then they may have a very good chance to go and have a very, very good season. We don't know. But I think that if the further they go, the lower down the table they'll be. I don't think they'll get relegated. I think they'll just scrape enough points to do it. But I think it won't be anywhere near as good as last year. 15th, them lovely lot up the road, Newcastle. And I've only put them 15th at the minute because Rafa is there. I obviously, as a Sunderland fan, hope that he walks, but taking bias out of it, it's criminal that he hasn't been backed. I know people can say how can anyone be surprised, but really when you look at it, it's not really the point. Whether you're surprised or not, it's not the point. The fact that Bournemouth, for example, have spent £25 million on their record signing, and that Newcastle, the best they can do is a loan deal for a relegated striker, that doesn't really speak very high regards of them. I think they're in real danger if Rafa does go, but I don't think he will. I think he'll stay until the end of the season, but there's not a chance for me he'll be there next season. For right now, though, 15th I think is the best that they're going to get, but I think it could alternate because the bottom end of the table is that tight. 14th, Southampton, who obviously stayed up last season. They've made a couple of decent signings. They've got Vestergaard from Ajax, I believe it is, from Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they've got Angus Gunn. And I've watched Talk Norwich City quite a lot last season, and they were raving about Angus Gunn, and I think he's a good player. What I've seen of him, I'll rate him as a goalkeeper. I think they'll have a bit more of a steady year than they did last season, but ultimately I think that they will just about be okay. I think that's probably the best that they can hope for the minute. Just don't be as bad as last year. 13th and 12th are the other 2 promoted clubs back to back, so I might as well mention them together. 13th Fulham and 12th Wolves. Both of whom I think, particularly Fulham actually, I think they've impressed me quite a bit in their transfer business. They've got Andre Schürrle on loan, they've got Mitrovic, they've got Seri, they've Alfie Mawson from Swansea. They've really gone places with the players that they're bringing in. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up finishing higher, and the football they played last season was very, very good. So I think that Fulham will stand a very, very good chance of comfortably avoiding relegation, and they might even finish higher. Likewise, Wolves, Martino, I think is it from Monaco, who they've brought in. A couple of other players like Ruben Neves and Jota. They brought in those players and did well for them last year. And Wolves play a decent style of football last season as well. Not to mention they'll look to carry that into this season. So I think both of these, I've seen talk about Wolves being in the top 10. I'm not quite sure I go that far, but I do think both of them will comfortably be fine and stay up. And you've got to remember that as a promoted club, your first aim, stay up. Whatever your squad looks like, stay up. Be realistic. But it wouldn't surprise me they both finish higher. 11th is Bournemouth. I used to keep on predicting these to go down, but I think with Eddie Howe, he's got them playing too good football, and I think they've got too good of players, of calibre of players, to get relegated now. So I think there's a good chance now that Bournemouth might very well kick on, and they just broke their record signing this window for 25 million quid, if I remember correctly. And they've also got Nathan Aké, they've got Callum Wilson, they've got a Phoebe. No, sorry, they did have a Phoebe. They've got Joshua King. They've got all sorts of players there. I think they'll be comfortably fine. 10th, Crystal Palace. Now, obviously, I think last year they finished 11th, if I remember rightly. I think, double checking whether they definitely finished mid-table amongst near the top 10, after having started last season with 7 defeats and no goals scored. So the fact Roy Hodgson done an amazing job that he did speaks volumes. And this year, again, they've got Max Meyer coming in. They've got the players there for me that should really be pushing more towards the top 10 of the Premier League, and I don't think they shouldn't really be struggling at that end of the league. So but then again, 10th to 17th is usually separated by less than 10 points. So you never know. I think Palace will have a better year this year than they did last season. 9th, Leicester. Can Leicester fans please explain to me why Claude Puel's under pressure when, if I'm right, he got them, it was either 8th or 9th last season. He got you in the top 10, so again, no, I don't buy that he has to be under pressure really, but I think if they keep Harry Maguire, massive statement of intent for them, although it does look apparently that he might be up for going to Manchester United, so if they keep him this window, I think they might very well sell him in January, which might put a spanner in the works with where I think they'll finish. But for right now, I think they'll finish 9th. A solid top 10 finish, but like I said many years ago, the fact that Leicester won the Premier League 2 years ago has cemented their status as probably a top 10 Premier League side for quite some time now. So, but we're now 9th. Whether Leicester fancy that a success, I don't know, but I think that's where they'll finish. 8th, West Ham. Manuel Pellegrini's under quite a bit of pressure here. They've just not long signed Lucas Perez from Arsenal. Jack Wilshere's come in, Felipe Anderson has come in. There's a good number of high calibre players that have come into West Ham, and they've spent quite a bit of money. They've spent quite heavily as well. So for me, that squad has to finish in the top 8. And if it doesn't, Pellegrini's got to be asking questions. I think really for West Ham, the success should be a good, solid top 10 finish and a good cup run or two. That's what they've got to realistically be able to look at. Manuel Pellegrini's obviously won a title at Manchester City. He's won a couple of League Cups as well. He's got the semi-final of the Champions League with City. Obviously West Ham, he hasn't got anywhere near as good a calibre level of a squad that he did there. But he will want to go and win things. He'll want to go and be successful there, I would like to think anyway. So I think 8th, West Ham United. 7th, the top 7 is probably going to be more, the teams, but the order might surprise you a bit, hopefully. 7th, obviously, Everton. Like I've said countless times before, a team that constantly is too good for the bottom 2/3 of the Premier League, but never is quite good enough to break into the bracket of the top 6 or top 4. The business they've done this year, I tell you what, they're trying to get Yerry Mina from Barcelona, so at the time of this recording, it is deadline day, so if they manage to get him, that could be a statement of intent. As of right now, I don't think their squad will have a special year. 7th, I think, is the best they can hope for at the moment, but been wrong before. Right, top 6. This is where it gets juicy. 6th, Arsenal. Probably the least surprising, I would imagine, out of the top 6, because I think Arsenal, from Wenger going, Arsenal fans finally get what they want. Unai Emery's come in, and he's got like Bernd Leno, Socrates. There's a few others that he's brought in that I think could look to stabilise them this season. I think their best bet is just to go and try and prioritise the Europa League. Try and get a top 6 finish at least, but go for the Europa League because you get. I don't get this disrespect of the Europa League because now Man United, for example, 2 years ago, they won it and got a Champions League place, and essentially that's the same thing as finishing in the top 4, except you get a trophy. So for me, I think Arsenal won't be close. It might be close to the top 4, but they're a long way off from the glories of what they want, because they should be in the challenge for the Premier League title, but they're a long way off from that yet. So I think Arsenal will finish 6th. I think it'll take time, but I think Unai Emery will eventually do well at Arsenal. Arsenal fans have to give him the time and patience, though. Right, fifth. I was debating between fifth and fourth quite a bit in my head about who was going to finish where. But fifth, I've put Chelsea. Sarri has come in. For me, the way they tracked Conte was disgraceful. I know, obviously, again, I don't know the situation. I know that apparently he'd lost, fallen out with quite a few people at the club, but I just don't get why you would wait that long to, sack him. Why not do it at the end of last season? And if you were going to give him a bit of time, why have you sacked him in July then? I don't get it. And not to mention the fact that they're in the Europa League as well means I don't think they will be in the top four. I think, again, like Arsenal, they should be prioritising the Europa League if they're not in the top four. They may very well finish there, I don't know. But, I think they need to, I think another season outside the top four is on the cards for Chelsea. So no better than last year. Fourth. I would not be surprised, however, if this team swapped place with Chelsea and finished fifth, but Tottenham. This is the first time in a while I've gone for Tottenham to actually finish in the top four, but when you look at it, Toby Alderweireld, Moussa Dembele and Danny Rose were all put up for sale by Spurs at the time of the recording, and I think with Alderweireld and Dembele, apparently they're in their last years of their deal, both deals respectively, and they're getting a bit of difficulty in terms of actually trying to get them to sign new ones. Apparently if Alderweireld signs another deal, for some stupid reason a 25 million release clause goes in, so I can see why they're trying to get rid of him. And there's rumours of him going to Man United, whether or not in this window in January. Pochettino, I feel sorry for him because I think Daniel Levy is not giving him leeway to progress really. And I think that if he was to invest in them, there's no reason that they couldn't go and challenge for the league. But right now, look, I think Pochettino's still done an amazing job at Tottenham. And I think if he was to continue progress, top four again would be progress for Spurs, given that they haven't made any real significant signings. Third, Manchester United. Jose Mourinho, the demeanour that he's had across the summer of having a go at his players, and the fact that Man United, finished on 81 points last year if I remember rightly, which again on its own is actually a good season in the Premier League. It's only because City had this freakishly one-off 100-point season. Well, I never know, it might not be a one-off, but they had 100 points, which is very rarely done in the Premier League. City winning the league isn't a one-off. Obviously, they've got far too good a squad. But at the same time, them finishing with 100 points is a one-off. And that's the only reason why Man United's season last year didn't look very good. But for me, Mourinho has to at least challenge comfortably, at least be in the mix for the Premier League this season. If I'm right, I think it's the last year of his contract. So obviously, if they don't see any real progression here, then there's no way he'll be getting a new contract. But they have to at least challenge for the league this season and win at least one trophy for me in order to say that it's a moderately successful season. They've really got to go all out for it. As of right now, they're trying to go for Diego Godin from Atletico Madrid. That could be a real significant signing if they manage to pull it off again, if not in this window or in January. Who knows, we will see. Right. These two were always, the top three obviously include Man United, were my top three. I was really debating who could win the league. But here goes. Second, Manchester City. Now, if anyone is going to break the curse of not being able to win the league 2 seasons on the bounce, it will be Manchester City, I think. They've got a very good squad added to it. They've added Riyad Mahrez to it, who I really rate. They've got the players there already. And whereas I think Man City, in the last 2 times that they won the Premier League, I get the impression the year afterwards the intensity is nowhere near as good. They don't want it as much. I don't know whether that is a natural case that happens. But since 2009, when Man United did it, no team has won the league back-to-back. If any team's going to do it, it's going to be this City side. But for that pure reason is why I've gone City to finish second. But you never know. And even if they won the league, Pep Guardiola, I think, has admitted himself so much that they are not going to finish with 100 points. But I don't think that's their aim. Their aim is just to try and win the Premier League again. So if they do it, kudos to them. And then obviously this will be void. And first, Liverpool. Right. Liverpool, the last couple of years, have always been a team that have been pushing around the top 4 bracket, but they've never been able to, advance further than that. For me, Jurgen Klopp, I think, has to start winning trophies. I know that Liverpool fans do love Klopp, and I can see why. But ultimately, if this was Brendan Rodgers, they would be really getting on his case here. So I think, Jurgen Klopp has been there 2.5 years now, and he hasn't won a piece of silverware yet. So that's he has progressed them. Don't get me wrong, he has definitely progressed them. But they're at the point now where they do desperately need to start winning trophies. Alisson is a big game-changing signing for me. I think if he's a good, reliable keeper, he will save them points this season. Where you look at games that Karius cost them last year, for instance. The big thing for me that Liverpool need to come over, and I'll give you just an example, a couple of games in the last couple of years. 16-17, they beat Man City 1-0 and drew 2-2 away at Sunderland, who were relegated. Last season, they beat City 4-3 and then lost 1-0 at Swansea, who, coincidentally, also got relegated. They drew 3-3 at Watford. They drew 1-1 at Newcastle. They, if I'm right, I think they struggled to beat West Brom. Well, actually, no, sorry, I think they beat them at home, but away, they were 2-0 up and dropped 2 points there. Far too many big away games and big occasions they've dropped points. As against the so-called lesser teams, that's where they need to cut those things out if they are to win the league, because champions win those games. Liverpool at home against the big teams, I have no problem with them, because I think that they usually find a way to at least get a point, but if not a win out of those teams. I mean, Christ, they beat City three times out of 4 last year, albeit 2 of them were in the Champions League. But for me, this season they've got to cut those stupid games out, and they need to sort the defence. If they can get another centre-half on the quality level of Van Dijk, but Alisson may well make up points for that on his own, then they're really in business here. But I think Liverpool, this is their best chance to win the league, I think, for quite some time. And I know Jurgen Klopp obviously will desperately want them to take it. So guys, that's my Premier League predictions. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, like, comment, subscribe. What you think. Do you agree with me about the Premier League predictions, or do you think I'm way off? Anyway, guys, hope your club has a good season, minus Newcastle, obviously. Sorry, Newcastle fans. But yeah, hopefully you have a good year and bring on the Premier League. Let's see how it goes this year. Bye-bye.